joining us, man. I'm so excited about it. Thank you for having us. How's everything going on your end? How's the Friday treating you?
Hey, Friday's going pretty well. I really appreciate you guys reaching out and having me on here. This is going to be a great discussion today. I'm looking forward to it, kicking off the weekend right.
Yeah, man. There you go. Any plans for the weekend, anything like that? What you doing?
Actually, we're gonna be taking it easy. Yeah, nothing crazy. You know, we're in quarantine, so it's gonna be a little bit of a quiet weekend, but we've gotten used to it. Fiance and I, we enjoy it. We enjoy each other, obviously. You know.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah. How about you? You have anything planned for this weekend?
No, man. I'm probably just gonna catch up on some Netflix stuff. I sent you some titles on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Go and check on some of those, like the Jeffrey Epstein one and a couple other ones. But I'm grateful, man. I'm safe. The family's blessed, man. Everybody's doing well, health-wise. Yeah, man. So I'm grateful. We're fortunate. We're super blessed. How about you guys? I'm curious how, since the pandemic started, how have you guys shifted from the work from home? What are some of the things that AAP put in place to make sure you guys are healthy and continue the ship to flow?
Yeah, so I'm actually proud of the team as a whole. The organization has really rolled into the work from home capability pretty well. I mean, we did a couple tests, dry runs before the quarantine actually went into effect, and our IT department and NetSec was able to just really get everything buttoned up. And I think there's some departments that weren't historically ready for this kind of capability, or it wasn't built into the way that they work. SEO as a whole, e-com as a whole, like that's kind of our bread and butter, mobile and rolling with the punches. But it's really been nice to see everybody come together and align on this being a capability, this being our reality right now, and going from there and trying to really put our customers at the #1 spot and be there when they need us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm curious, we actually brought this topic up when we first did our Rankable. I'm curious, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the work from home, or do you prefer the office life?
I think I'm pretty much set in the middle. There's definitely a great vibe when you go into an office and you're around your team and everything. And the in-person meetings, I do miss those. Especially on some of the more juicier topics, the ones that you really get into the weeds on. But at the same time, I'm also a big fan of work from home, being able to hunker down and kind of wall off and get some work done. So it's been a good it's been easy for me, I should say, to have this time.
Absolutely, man. I'm kind of in the same boat. We're lucky and fortunate. I think, Mike, we actually started working from home the last week of February. So during our last couple of weeks in New York City, started getting a little crazy. We started seeing people around with masks, and luckily, Mike was on top of things, and we started working. I think my last day was like the end of February, like the 28th or something like that.
Wow.
And then they shut down the city maybe the week or two after. So we're super fortunate from that, and just seeing what the team has been doing, man. We've been really up and leveling up our game, man. So very proud of the team being a part of IPR. Like I said, just been really cool, and appreciate Mike for all that, man. And before we get into our topic, to let everybody else know, today's topic is going to really talking about PPC and SEO, and really some ways that brands should prioritize right now, given the current climate. So I was super excited to have you on, Matt, and we go over some topics. And love to start it off to understand, why you think there should be more collaboration between PPC and SEO teams. So what are your initial thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think in some people's perspective, SEO and PPC can sit at a little bit of a contentious, juxtaposition there, and it doesn't benefit the company as a whole when that kind of little bit of a rivalry, healthy rivalry is fine, but being opposed one against another, it's not beneficial for anybody, mainly the organization. And there's a lot of data sets coming out of PPC, given by the platforms that they're purchasing traffic on, that enable better decisions on the organic side. So it's both really benefit one another. And if you're not looking at the data as a whole from every outlet that you have the capability to access, you're doing your organization a disservice. And really, I think any barrier that's there, it definitely shouldn't be. The ultimate goal is increase traffic at the highest conversion rate possible. So it's easy for both teams to align at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think it's very, very peculiar that most organizations don't set up their teams in that way, right? Because when you think of PPC and SEO, they both have the same end goal, right? So how do we get customers through the door? How do we get them to engage with us? And how do we get at the end goal, right? How do we get that sale? So the fact that the data sharing process and, for most teams aren't like that is really shocking. But given this time right now, given the changes in the consumer search behaviors and the way we're consuming content nowadays with this COVID situation, it's very important to have that collaboration, right? You have to know what's happening on the paid side. How do we lower our costs, right? And from an organic side, how do we make sure we're ranking and have those positions, and what kind of content can we create that, that really is valuable for our users and answers the intent, right? Understands what they're looking for. So that's
absolutely. I think the scenario that really keeps these two teams apart, PPC and SEO, is the fact that, there's a pretty nice bucket that you can put PPC into. Mm-hmm. Every organization has a performance marketing team, and it's a very easy transaction to understand with direct attribution lines. And it runs off of a budget. There's quickly perceived value, and then an easy funnel into attribution in terms of conversion on whatever you're trying to convert with, whether that's straight up dollars or sign-ups or whatever, downloads, etc. The scenario for SEO, it's a little different. So it doesn't fit into that performance marketing box as neatly as email or PPC or display or et cetera. It's we talked about this, or it's at the intersection of a lot of different organizations, and it needs to have visibility to the larger organization, not just one specific team, because there's a lot that impacts your ability to get traffic as a domain. So that's probably what tends to keep them, in my mind, separate. So
I totally agree with you. I don't think there's a ton of factors with that, and I just think it's the long-term play, so to speak, on SEO. I think that's why they keep them, right? Because for those listening, if you're not familiar with it, PPC, I just look at that as a really bottom funnel thing. So how do we get traffic right in the door right now without having to wait the 3 to 6 months that it would take for us to properly optimize? And just the organically, right? You just have to make sure how do we take the SERP real estate, right? So it's definitely important for you to have both strategies in line with each other. Like you said, that strategy, that collaboration, lowering your CTR, what is your conversion, whether it be the newsletter signups and those things, and then just monitoring those metrics and optimizing effectively. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, something that I get a lot, and I love to hear from you, from somebody who's in-house, right? How do you prove the value of SEO to your higher up? So what are some of the things that they look at so you can say, hey, and this is what I'm doing, and to really show the impact across the organization?
So at some organizations, I would say that's an easier end goal than others. There are companies that are technology first, they were built and, in the last 10 years or the last 20 years, and this capability, this understanding of organic traffic being a main revenue driver for a lot of organizations, it's built into their, first days on the internet. There are other organizations that are a little bit older, and they're grounded in, brick and mortar transactions. And then, as they evolved, they eventually emerged on the internet as well and saw that as a viable opportunity. It's definitely an education process. The best SEO teams are able to evangelize their needs and spread the value, but also the reasoning behind making the moves that are beneficial for the team. So how exactly do you do that? I think it comes from improving personal communication skills. Honestly, it's about digesting these complex topics that are foreign to, a lot of users of the internet, and saying like, hey, this is why it makes sense, boiling it down into, things that are a little bit more bite size, and just serving it up, and then continually reiterating, like, don't change the story up. Say it the same way continually. And if you're going to get traction there, it's going to eventually happen.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Totally agree with you. And Mike, thanks for dropping the link too. So we also have a blog there too, if anybody would like to check it out. We're looking at the balance in paid, organic, and search in the wake of COVID. And I think that's a good segue to actually my next question. I'm curious, in terms of SEO, who are some of your go-tos, and how did you get involved with SEO? Who are some of your go-tos, and what are some emerging trends that you're seeing given the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, so shouts out to Mike King. He's been a go-to for me for a little while, since around 2013. And then Will Reynolds, he's on the top of my list. Bill Sebald as well. The guys up at Stone Temple, they just got acquired, but they were doing some great work as well up in Boston. Man, there's a lot of quality people in the industry that I've learned from. I want to give a shout out to one local here in Raleigh that I've learned a lot from, named Jenny Howes, and she's great as well. In terms of how I got into SEO, it's been a little bit of a different journey. I shouldn't say that, because I think the majority of people that are in SEO, everybody that's in SEO, nobody went to school for it. I should say that, but we've all had an interesting pathway, and I think the main thing that it boils down to is curiosity and probably the love of learning. So, I went to school for biology and chemistry. I worked at Johnson Matthey, a large chemical engineering company, right out of the gate. So I did that for 2.5 years ish, doing chemical characterization on physical and liquid product, analyzing how much heavy metal was in those products. And, I went to school for it. So once I was in the lab doing those analysis, it wasn't scratching my itch, in the love of learning spectrum. I'd been in school for how many years, and at the same time, I envisioned my job really providing that value.
Yeah.
Where I was going to be learning cutting edge stuff at all the time, and it ended up being kind of monotonous. And so I dug into HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and really at that point, 2013, I ended up figuring out that I was late to the game. I'll admit this, but I ended up figuring out that, hey, you can impact the way a domain ranks on a search engine, and that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been online since 1994. I sent my grandma an email, so that's like crazy to think about, but I didn't really understand how search engines operated. I didn't understand how the internet itself was working, how domains worked, how networking was a thing. And I was starting from, I guess, square one, and it just progressed pretty heavily from there. Somebody else that I want to shout out is Mark Kennedy at SEOM Interactive. He gave me my first shot at SEO. It's a small shop outside of Philadelphia, and I was really able to cut my teeth there. And after, I said 2015. So 2013 to 2015 was learning. 2015 to middle of 2017, I was really growing, and ended up getting a job with Advance, doing local SEO specifically. And then mid 2018, I rolled into a more leadership role for the team as a whole. So it's been a rapid journey, and one that keeps me on my toes, and that's ultimately why I love being in SEO. It's the ability to never stop learning.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things I love as well. We also, I think the fact that it changes so much and you have to be on top of your game. And I think something that stood out too was the fact that everybody has a different journey in terms of learning, right? It all depends on your appetite and how fast you go, and how, you utilize your resources is how quickly you can pick up on it and actually doing it too, and implementing it goes a long way. Yep. And we also We have a question from a Matt Caramenico. Apologies if I didn't pronounce
Oh,
it.
hey. Yeah, I actually know Matt.
There you go, Matt.
Matt.
Perfect. So he had a really great question. I would love to, hear your response. But he asks, how do you respond to a client who focuses on $10 billion and up type companies, does B2B services and says SEO and PPC isn't going to generate leads? Which service would you focus on if budget wasn't a question, SEO or PPC? It's a great question.
How do you focus on 10 billion, a B2B business is that focuses on 10 billion and up?
Type company.
Sorry.
Yes, so they're a B2B company that focus on businesses of 10 billion and up, and they say SEO and PPC isn't going to generate leads. What would you recommend, or what would you focus on if budget wasn't a question? So SEO or PPC?
Yeah, I think that it's a combination of both. Absolutely, you're going to have to start a pretty large scale content strategy around meeting your end customer where they're at currently. So it's about positioning them as the leader in the space. And if they're not making content about that already, they're losing out on their ability to provide awareness for their organization on the search engine. So yeah, I mean, B2B, people, whether you're B2C focused or B2B focused, you're going to search engines to find out about your industry and changes within the industry. And I think a pretty aligned, a fully bought in, robust content strategy from the organization would be pretty powerful. And then you're blasting that out through your ability to, direct links on PPC and your optimized pages.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would just piggyback off of that and say, it depends what the goals of the marketing campaign is, right? So we're looking to just generate leads really quickly. And what are your KPIs for that quarter necessarily? Then, you would want to do a mix, right? You might want to put more dollars into the PPC depending on your short-term goals. But I would do the long-term SEO play. And like I said, divulging on content, right? Understanding who my users are. Who is my active audience? Who are people that I can actually get that may be with a competitor, right? How are they engaging with their content? And what are their niches and how can we fit into that? So a comprehensive content strategy definitely helps with that in terms of your SEO, making sure you're ranking, and also your PPC, brand awareness thing. So I think a lot of things with B2B companies, content is going to be a big thing, but I think people don't necessarily execute or brands don't execute it as well as they should be on the B2B side. It's just so professional and
Absolutely.
And depending on the topic, it could be super boring. If you're doing like computer engineering or something like that, how do you make that stand out to the average user?
Well, at that point, I think the average user isn't your target. I think it depends on your goal. Do you want to become a household name brand, or are you looking to actually capture quality user? It's not about the traffic that you're going to be getting. It's about what the traffic does once they get to your platform. And if they're interested in your topic and it has the value that they're looking for, they're going to then think of you as a viable option for that B2B relationship. If you're out there on your pedestal saying like, hey, I know this industry, I am a great option for your need. What would be a barrier to you getting that sale? I mean, I think there's a misconception of B2B doesn't really play well online. Like at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's relationship building. It's brand awareness, and setting the organization up for success takes time, and it takes a lot of digging into.
And I'm curious with that, being that we're on this topic, right? So for that same B2B company, how would that person formulate, or how would you approach that content strategy? Like, how would you formulate the ideas for that? The keyword research, what are some of the things that you go into that content strategy?
Yeah, so I think you're going to be leveraging your knowledge experts inside of your organization pretty heavily to say, hey, your clients that are actually using our product, what are the things that they're worried about? What keeps them up at night? What are the roadblocks that you see to implementation or the barriers to purchase, et cetera? And then building your content off of keyword, strategies dug into those specific, bottomless pits, if you will. Like it's going to continue to, you're going to be able to continue to drill down. You have to know your customer. If you're I guess that it rolls back to that. If you don't really have a clear understanding of who your user is, who your customer is, who your decision makers are in that pipeline, then you're probably not selling too much outside of online space either. Like let's be honest about that.
And I think another thing too is what barrier, you nailed it, right? What barriers are there when they actually do click, right? Because the experience when they actually get there is a big thing of it, a big part of it, right? What is the experience when I get there? The content answering my question, right? Am I engaged with this content, right? Is there more information that I could get from this person to how do I become the trusted voice if you're a brand? That should be main thing. How do I become the trusted voice? How do I reach the person at the top, middle, bottom funnel? And how do I ultimately get them to love our brand, use our products, and champion us? Right? And is there any other question? That was a great question, Matt. I really appreciate you. We only have about 8 minutes to hear from anybody else if there are other questions. We also had a question from Bailey Jensen that we can kind of dive into now. But can you, he or she asked, can you talk about cannabis market and how it being not legal on a federal level may inhibit the ability to depend on PPC as a resource to funnel traffic? And that's a really, really good question. We're gonna have a rankable segment next week with Weed Maps and Drizzly speaking about things similar to that. But I'd love to hear your take on that, though, being in-house.
So my take on that, I'm full disclosure, I'm not in the weed industry. That's a great industry, though. That's pretty cool. Definitely a nice emerging market. But what I will say is this goes all the way back to something that you and I have discussed privately. It's the fundamental idea that SEO is a capability. It's a capability that enterprises need to understand is fully at the intersection of every organization within their every department within their organization, I guess I should say. And that ends up looking like a direct connection to legal. Hey, is this even allowed, or do we need to refocus our, campaign strategy within PPC on, specific regions where this is legal to consume at a state level? Because you can target as drilled in as you want to with a PPC campaign, and then it's up to you probably to present a wall for users to self-classify as being able to consume your content that you're putting out. I mean, obviously, reading about weed isn't illegal, but shopping for weed online isn't legal everywhere. And you're not going to be gating users by their IP. You're going to be gating users by, hey, I've self-classified as being in a state that allows me to view and then potentially purchase. And then at your endpoint, you're going to handle the, can we actually ship to you in your POS system? Or is it, there's going to be the barrier of, are they going to even be able to visit our brick and mortar location, that kind of thing. So within PPC, you have plenty of opportunity to isolate your users and direct them to your product through the platforms that are already at play. Are you able to do that with the weed industry currently? I don't know the answer to that question. And that's something that you're definitely going to need to button up with your legal department for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually worked with a couple at a prior company, and a big resource for them, being that they have those legality issues, they use social for everything, right? So they use a lot of really building relationships and understanding where are their target market customers are and how do they join that customer, right? How do they meet them where they are, being that there aren't many regulations on social and things of that nature. And I've seen that work really well. So I would definitely look at social listening platforms, understanding your target market, what are some things that they want to see from you, and create content that's geared towards that, right? And keep drawing them in. So that's something definitely I'd look at. We also have a question from Robert. Thank you again, Robert. So what's been the biggest adjustment from an SEO standpoint when you shifted from small, medium-sized business to a giant like AAP? And he said, shout out from Seattle. I'm not sure what that was.
SEOM, yeah. I think I know who that is. I think it's Robert Spinrad, but I think it's Spin. Yeah. I would say the biggest shift has been understanding that at scale, there are certain tactics that aren't going to work, and then they're not gonna work. they're not going to make as much of a move on your, organic needle as they will for an SMB or a smaller business. If you have multiple million, I was just talking to somebody about this. If you have multiple millions of backlinks to your domain and different subdomains, first probably focus on consolidating your subdomain setup, into one specific domain. That's gonna provide a lot of power there. But if you don't have that capability, you don't have to focus on getting backlinks necessarily, because 1 or 100 backlinks isn't going to really raise the sea, depending on quality of that, domain that it's coming from, if you have 4 million. But if you have 5 and you get another 10 over a period of, 6 months, that's great. That's insane growth, So it's situations like that where, a lot of people talk about just content and backlinks. Well, as a national brand, you're building content, and it better be quality, because, if not, you're going to get slapped for it. But, by your users, I'm saying. And then, the quality will then be rewarded with the industry or people, that love your brand, giving you backlinks for that content. What are you creating? That's a scenario. So it's not necessarily about focusing on backlinks or focusing on a content. It's a more holistic view of like, how is the website structured? You're going to be playing with a lot of larger departments than yourself, and you're not going to have as much access or free reign in a scenario where you're in-house at a large organization as you might if you're, the SEO for an SMB that has, potentially a 25-page WordPress website. I can get in there, lift the hood, and like do everything that's, necessary. I'm not probably going to be allowed to do everything that I want to do inside of a, larger organization, because they've got a 100-person IT team that handles, everything. So it's a difference of scale, and then figuring out like, hey, where are the levers? When you're, another thing that I would say is focus on consolidation. There's a large potential at large organizations that are e-commerce for duplication of content. There's plenty of opportunity within consolidation to refocus your users' journey through your website, and then also provide a more well thought out pathway for a search engine user to roll through as well.
Some great points. Great points, Matt. I'm curious too. I know you're with AAP now, and it sounds like basically there's pros and cons to both. Obviously being a part of AAP is a huge thing. And me personally, if I was in house, I would be shocked, or I'd do something like the LinkedIn thing where I de-index the website or something like. I'd be scared of something like that.
Ooh, man.
You definitely have some more leeway when it comes to the smaller, medium-sized brands. So definitely sounds like there's pros and cons in both. But
definitely pros and cons of both.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. We have 1 more minute left. We could probably squeeze 1 more question in if anybody else has one. All right. If not, I definitely we'll wrap this up. And I just want to say thank you again, Matt. It was a pleasure, meeting you, to give people home and context. We actually met on LinkedIn through content.
Content. And then that's absolutely true.
And then we just end up hitting it off. The next thing you know, me and Matt were sharing Netflix movies and kids stories, weekends, and stuff like that. So I just want to say I appreciate you, Matt. You're our second guest on Rankable. I'm really appreciative, man. I really enjoyed the conversation and insights you provided. And man, I hope to do this again sometime. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Jared. Really, really happy to be here. And it was great talking to you. My brother, I appreciate you. Thank you for everyone who was in attendance. Thank you for joining IPR Rankable event. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us today. So we so appreciate it. Thank you for the continued support. Next week, we'll have a great segment on emerging markets, as we'll be having Weed Maps. I'll be there. That is going to be a conversation. And shout out to Mike King and Mike Waddell, who's going to be running those conversations. And thank you all. And also have these clips on LinkedIn if you guys want to check this out later. So thank you all. Have a great weekend and see you guys soon. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take it easy. Bye-bye.